Have you guys heard of Hue? You guys like that chocolate? Or I think I might eat it every day. I might really eat it every day. And I run marathons, but I also eat the chocolate every day. So thank you. So Jason, come up because you founded this. You are like one of my favorite, humans that are building beautiful things in the world. It's really incredible, incredible, incredible. So for context, just so that we have some context, but I know that, is your microphone on?
Is it on?
It's perfect.
All right.
It's so perfect. And by the way, what I love about you is that you're always so honest. Actually, why don't we switch just for I would love for you to be in this seat because I like to be symmetrical. Sorry, this is OCD, entrepreneur OCD. So just for context on, your background, because you were in hedge funds back in the day.
Yes.
And now you're building one of the most interesting, I think, wellness companies in the world, and to really have this massive vision, but just a little bit on your background.
Hi, everybody. We got some ice cream coming out, some organic, plant-based cosmic bliss.
And there's a whole story around it. That's why we're having an incredible ice cream social.
With Hue chocolate chips as a topping. I have a very bizarre background. I went straight to finance out of college into a hedge fund. And in my second and third year of working, I got really sick. I developed a few rare autoimmune diseases at the time and a degenerative eye disease where I was going blind at the age of 23. And I was supposed to be fully blind by the age of 30. My eye disease was incurable. All the Western medicine doctors told me there was no cure for my disease and that I just would have to accept my fate. And I decided to take matters in my own hands, just because I was a naive optimist, and decided to see if I could cure myself with food and lifestyle. This is back in the year 2001, when food as medicine wasn't really a concept that anyone really paid attention to. And through a lot of research and a lot of experimentation, my vision came back, and I was the first case they'd ever seen of someone reversing that disease. And I did it with food and lifestyle, no pharmaceuticals. And when I walked out of the doctor's office that day, which is one of those days when I'm sure you all have one of those days where your life has changed forever, I decided I was going to devote a significant portion of my life, free time, philanthropy, and everything else to waking people up and trying to make it easier for people to live a healthier life, particularly in this country. Where the statistics then are less bad than they are today. Today is actually much worse in terms of the levels of obesity, chronic disease, ADHD, autism, allergies, mental health issues, all of which can be traced back to our environment and our food supply. And I stayed in the hedge fund business for 20 years. And then along the way, a few years after that, my brother-in-law, my wife's brother, I started talking to him a lot about how I was living, and he started living that way and noticed how much it improved his health. And him and my wife and me, we decided to create Hue Kitchen, which originally, for many of you probably don't know this, originally was a restaurant, not a chocolate company. And it was a restaurant that was extremely risky, and some would say ahead of its time. Our restaurant that we opened in the Union Square area of New York City, the whole restaurant was gluten-free, dairy-free, refined sugar-free, and seed oil-free. This is back in 2011. All of the animals we sourced were wild or raised in a way that was evolutionarily consistent. And it was kind of like a paleo-inspired or ancestral-inspired food court. And the chocolate was an accident. We were making gluten and grain-free baked goods, because I just love baked goods, and things like muffins and cookies and scones and such. And we needed chocolate chips for our baked goods, and we could not find chocolate chips that met our strict ingredient guardrails. And we realized we had to make our own chocolate chips for the baked goods. And in that journey, we came up with a chocolate recipe that we loved, and we decided to turn them into chocolate bars. And then we got a really lucky break. By the way, we knew nothing about restaurants, and we knew nothing about CPG or chocolate for that matter. And if I knew then what we know now, I never would have done it. So blind optimism is a necessary trait for entrepreneurs. And we got a lucky break. One of our chefs, his girlfriend at the time, was a forager at the Columbus Circle Whole Foods location. And she came in one day and said, "This is the best healthy chocolate I've ever had. Can we sell it at Whole Foods?" And that was how Hugh Chocolate got born.
It's amazing. I mean, and this is what I think is so, you're given something that was like a life-changing event for you, and you made it your mission. And I think that's where the most powerful and the biggest missions that are aligned with universe, whatever you believe in, come from. Okay, so go forward.
Okay.
Let's just talk about some of the wins, because I just feel like you always win. You're winning.
Win.
You're winning.
You're winning. You see the wins.
Well, the winnings, but you know what? Anyone who, and this is what I love about anyone who's saying that they're winning all the time, they're probably not really building a business. They're probably not, because the humility and the honesty.
Yeah.
But let's talk about some of those, because I think they're super interesting in such a short amount of time.
There were, before I get to HumanCo, so when we opened Hugh Kitchen, the restaurant, 2 months after I launched my own hedge fund, which was a catastrophe in terms of timing. And it just sort of, the chips kind of fell the way that they did. There were no fewer than 5 days where I was within hours of closing Hugh Kitchen. The first 6 months of the restaurant were just an unmitigated catastrophe in terms of the financials. But I think, as you point out, I really feel like I was an actual miracle with what I did. And I felt like this was my duty to try to help people. And I invested an imprudent amount of my own money. We had no outside investors into trying to make this a reality. I did not invest the money because I was bullish. I did it because everyone around me thought I was insane. And I also didn't want to have the conversation with traditional investors, because my world was professional investing. And I didn't want to have that traditional kind of investor conversation of, "Oh, I'm looking at your margins. Why don't you substitute this shittier, inferior ingredient that's bad for people on the planet and get your margins up and make your business look better?" I never wanted that conversation. And I knew that would happen, by the way. And there were many decisions we made in the early days of Hugh that were bad for our P&L and good for people. And some of those we got credit for, and some of those you never knew about. But I wanted to be able to sleep at night, because as a public market investor, and I was involved in many of the public big food companies, mostly on the short side, I saw how they made decisions. And it wasn't necessarily malicious. It was the way that the capital markets are structured, where whenever there was a hard decision that a public company has to make about better for bottom line or better for people, they choose better for people, they get fired. So the system is rigged against seeing healthier products exist. And that's why you see so many terrible, terrible products for people in the grocery store. It's because those are the highest profit margins. Those are the most shelf stable. Those are the most homogenous. And the only way for businesses to scale massively, historically, has been to widgetize and homogenize and commodify animals and all the other practices that go into making stuff at scale. So there were a lot of ups and downs. And then we hit this point where the word of mouth about our authenticity and what was working just started to spread. We didn't have a marketing budget. We didn't really spend money on marketing, and we got very lucky with how much of our visibility happened organically from people talking about it, because at the time there wasn't many things like Hugh Kitchen or Hugh Chocolate. And then as it started to grow, we had to sort of figure out things on the fly. We made our chocolate in a very different way than 99.9% of chocolate globally. We had to retrofit our own machines. We had to figure out the supply chain, which didn't really exist. At one point, we were one of the largest buyers of organic coconut sugar in the United States, which was very weird. And as we were kind of figuring all this stuff out on the fly, I realized we had built an ecosystem of a lot of different pieces, from investors, celebrities, organic ingredient providers, logistics. And I realized that we had this kind of platform element that could be used for other companies, and we could help other companies. And my goal was to see many more really high integrity, high level of caliber on ingredients and practices. My goal was to see those kind of companies succeed, because there aren't that many of them. And as a consumer and as a parent of 2 children, I wanted to see a lot more of those companies, but they just kept failing because the economics of a lot of these companies that do it right don't make sense in the early days. And that was when I decided to come up with the idea of HumanCo. I was in the kind of final innings of my hedge fund career. At that point, I was probably 17, 18 years into it. And I had a very difficult decision to make, financially speaking. We had a fairly large hedge fund that was very lucrative, with a bunch of people, but every day I was walking into the office and I felt like my soul was decaying. And I was actually very depressed, and I felt terrible about everything I was doing, but I was making a lot of money. And I always thought as a kid that making money meant happiness, and it doesn't. I felt like I got to the top of my mountain and there was nothing to see. And I had a hard look in the mirror many times. Most of it was my wife pushing me, saying, you have to stop, you have to stop, you have to pursue what really fulfills you. And the idea of HumanCo came to me, which was to create a health and wellness holding company. You could think of it as a mini conglomerate, to eventually go against big food, where we would buy and build brands that had very high standards, similar to Hu, but in other food categories that aren't chocolate. And we could lead by example and show people that you can have amazing, delicious food that brings you happiness without compromising on the taste. And the idea was to build this sort of ecosystem under one umbrella, where people would know what the name HumanCo means. And if we come up with new brands or new products, even if you're not familiar with the brand, you would know what HumanCo is. And you would understand how strict our standards are and how insane I am. And you would hopefully want to try the products, and through your own wallet, you would begin and help the movement of helping other health and wellness companies succeed.
The best part about you doing this is, and by the way, we have ice cream. This is our ice cream social. There's ice cream on the back. If somebody can start passing them out, that would be great. Because the products that you actually have built that are good for you or better for you are actually the best products in the market. Like, they're really, really well done. You don't feel sick from it. It doesn't have ingredients that are, causing inflammation. So let's just talk about how you went and tested out, because you have a couple different really interesting products in your portfolio, right?
Yep.
So talk through some of those. I mean, everyone knows that, Hu.
Yep.
But then let's talk about the other ones and how you innovated on those different products.
Yeah. So we have, here comes the ice cream. People are going to get wildly distracted.
It's great. It's ice cream social, guys. It's like
I'll start with
it's recess.
I'll start with Cosmic Bliss. Cosmic Bliss used to be called Coconut Bliss. It's a 16-year-old company. It always was the leader in their standards. It was a family-owned company, no outside investors, that specialized in fair trade practices for people, and also specialized in all organic, all gluten-free. There's no refined sugar in that. Typically, all aspects of it are just, and a super clean label. Sustainable packaging, and the company works with a number of farmers all over the world for some of the ingredients that we source. It was my favorite ice cream. And the first thing I did when we created HumanCo was look at companies we'd want to buy. that already built something that I thought was better than what we could do. And our principle or premise was, if there's brands out there that meet the standards that we like and are kind of hitting a ceiling or struggling or haven't gotten to where they want to get to, those would be interesting candidates for us to buy under HumanCo. And if there was a opportunity in a product area where the market leader in that product area or that segment, where the market leader was disgusting, I wanted to come in and create a new version of that product. And so I talked about Cosmic Bliss. The brand that we created from scratch is called Snow Days. I grew up on a spectacular amount of junk food, and one of my favorite items were pizza rolls. Some of you may have had Totino's pizza rolls, regrettably. Totino's pizza rolls are the market leader. They're owned by General Mills. It's a $800 to $900 million a year business. If you look at the ingredient label of Totino's, for example, their best-selling SKU is pepperoni. It has 90 ingredients in it. It also has imitation cheese, and not because it's vegan. It's just because it's shit. And it has at least 7 ingredients in it that are banned in other countries. It is an abomination. And so we looked at that and said, wow, this pizza roll market is shockingly big, and 90% of it is this nuclear waste. Could we create a HumanCo version of Totino's? And we had a lot of elements in our ecosystem, and particularly around R&D. And for those of you who've done food R&D, you'll know it's very hard to do R&D when you don't use chemicals. And my vision was, could we create a pizza roll that is organic, gluten-free, grain-free, uses no seed oils, and uses grass-fed dairy for the cheese? And of course, everyone around me was like, yeah, that P&L is never going to work. And it kind of doesn't work yet, but if you all buy some, it will. If you ever try it, they sell it at Whole Foods now. We came up with the name Snow Days, and I think it's relevant because when people used to come into Hugh Kitchen, which also had like a market section, like a mini Erewhon, and people saw what our ingredient standards were, and they saw like what we didn't allow in the restaurant. Look on people's faces was like they entered heaven if you are strict. Like, oh my God, I can eat everything in this store. And I am gluten-free. I generally only eat organic. And for those of you who grew up in a zip code where there was snow as a kid, you may remember when you used to get woken up by your mom and she would say, hey, Jason, today's a snow day. You don't have school. It was literally like the best feeling in the world. And you were like, holy shit, what am I going to do? I could do anything. This is the best day ever. I wanted to capture that feeling in a brand so that you have that sort of unbridled freedom of not feeling like you have to ask all the hard questions like, who made this? Where did it come from? What do I have to be worried about? So that's where the name came from. And that was our own incubated brand from scratch. And now that's now nationwide. It's still on the smaller side, but if you taste it, you'll see it actually tastes better than Totino's as well. And then our third brand is a gluten and grain-free bread and pizza company. By the way, all of our brands are seed oil-free as well. It's called
What's the issue with seed oils? I'm sorry, I didn't know that seed oils.
Oh, okay. This is
He's always educating me. Apparently, also the last time I spoke to you during pandemic, you had told me that the milk companies or the oat milks and all of the stuff that they're using. Yeah, you have a lot of strong feelings about all of them.
That was a good one.
I learned a lot.
That was a good one. During the processed oat milk heyday, I was very vocal about the lack of health attributes about those things. Anyway, so seed oils are controversial. Seed oils are things like canola oil, which is also called rapeseed oil, which is actually the correct name, sunflower seed oil, safflower oil, and grapeseed oil. A few of those seeds, like sunflower seed, oil in and of itself is actually not that bad. The way that they make seed oils, so we don't have time for this, but there's some physiological debates about seed oils, fat composition in terms of omega-3 versus omega-6. We don't have to get into that. But if you actually Google how is canola oil made, most people don't realize how these seed oils are actually made. They're made like motor oil, and they have to be bleached. They have to be deodorized with chemicals. And the reason that they get deodorized is that the seeds are always rancid, and they have to get the rancid smell out of it. And then the way that they extract the oils are not in a typical cold pressed fashion, which is much more expensive. They actually use petroleum derivatives like butane and hexane to extract them. And that residue is on them. And then on top of it, depending on which seed we're talking about, if it's in this country, those seeds are sprayed. If it's not organic, those seeds are sprayed with a spectacular amount of pesticides, which also stays in the seed oils. So if you actually just look at how they're made without even debating the health aspects of the fat ratios, you will never want to eat them again. That is why we generally stand against highly industrially processed foods in general. And that's one of the worst that's out there. So that's why we don't do seed oils. Against the Grain is a gluten and grain-free pizza and bread company. We're actually the #1 gluten-free pizza. It was one of our favorites in our household. It doesn't taste like cardboard. It's actually amazing. And that was another family-owned company, no outside investors, that we approached. Basically said, you're our favorite. It's been around 15 years. It's based in Brattleboro, Vermont. And we approached them and said, this is our favorite. We love your standards. Interestingly enough, they had a great ingredient deck, but they did have canola oil in it. And the first thing we did when we bought it was we took out the canola oil and replaced it with olive oil. And that was not margin accretive. We're just trying to make everything better. And then we also have a HumanCo investments arm where we don't own the entirety of the company, where we own what we call semi-control, very, very involved, very active, significant aspects of control. And the two names we have in that part of our business are True Food Kitchen. If you're familiar with True Food Kitchen, it's a farm-to-table restaurant concept that's been around for about 16 years. There's 45 True Kitchens in 17 states. And then we have an interest in a direct-to-consumer marketplace that focuses on clean personal care and household products and getting rid of plastic, called Grove Collaborative. And that's actually a public company.
Amazing. And then, I mean, you had this huge vision for HumanCo. And then now you're doing things with Hailey Bieber, right? So talk about the smoothie. I know she's sold out of all of the smoothies in Erewhon, but talk about how that even happened, and then now the bigger, like the learnings from that, because that's a whole different type of innovation that you're seeing on the brand front, that I think the learnings you guys can take back from this and just what he's done and how he's thinking about the market is something that you can probably take back for your business as well.
Yeah, the celebrity involvement thing is a very complex one that can go wrong or right. And there are many, many companies that have done it in a way where it wasn't authentic. The consumer's very good at smelling bullshit. The worst example of that for me was when Tom Brady was promoting Subway, which most of you know, Tom doesn't eat bread, never mind Subway. And so you have to be very careful about who you align with and who you might involve. This was a serendipitous situation that kind of came to us. For those of you familiar with Erewhon has a smoothie program where they have partnered with celebrities to make their own custom smoothie. And they've done it with a bunch of celebrities, but Hailey Bieber created a smoothie that was based on her cosmetics line. It's called the Strawberry Glaze Smoothie, and her lip gloss, which was one of her first products for her cosmetics brand, which is called Rhode, RHODE, which is her middle name, turned out to be one of the most viral consumer products of 2023. Erewhon sells a almost unthinkable amount of these smoothies. It's been reported around 50,000 of these smoothies a month at $20 a piece in 10 stores. That's $1 million a month out of their only 10 stores. And she wanted to see if she could turn that smoothie into an ice cream. And she wanted it to be an organic ice cream that was clean label. It also potentially had national distribution. Turns out there's only 2 of those that exist, and we're one of them. And the owner of Erewhon, who's a friend, called me up and said, "Hey, Jason, are you familiar with Hailey Bieber's strawberry glazed smoothie?" This is like 7 months ago. And I said, "No." And I wasn't familiar with it. And he said, "Well, you're living under a rock or you're not looking at TikTok." And I said, "It's probably more the latter." But he said, he explained all this to me and said how big it was and said, "Could you figure out a way using Cosmic Bliss to turn her smoothie into an ice cream flavor that we could sell to people who don't need to come to Los Angeles, which is the only place you can get the smoothie?" And I thought about it. I had a bunch of conversations with her business partner and then her, and we decided it was worthwhile and decided we wanted to try it. And part of the reason was, I knew she really wanted to do this, and I knew that she really actually cares about all of the things that she does. She's really, really impressive. And I also felt that one of the challenges of healthy food that has always been a hurdle is that healthy food historically has not been cool. And one of the things that drives consumer behavior is it culturally relevant and is it cool, particularly in the younger generations? And there have been many healthy products that I've seen as a prospective investor or just as a consumer that have an amazing product, actually have amazing ingredients, actually has amazing taste,